enthusiastic students, staff, alumni, and awesome community alike. Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Habits. My name is Michael Serpell, and this week we'll be discussing yoga and meditation and why it is so beneficial for your physical, mental, and social well-being. Today, we've chosen a student who has been kind enough to be flexible with her schedule to join us on Healthy Habits today. And don't you worry, there'll be plenty more yoga-related puns coming up, but I'll be sure not to stick my foot in my mouth in the process. Our guest for today's episode is an RMIT journalist student who has also received an advanced diploma in yoga teaching from the Australian Yoga Academy. And she has her own yoga YouTube channel where she posts some fantastic yoga, meditation, and lifestyle videos with some pretty groovy backgrounds, might I add. So make sure you turn on your water features, have your yoga mats handy, light some candles, burn some incense, and welcome your online yoga teacher extraordinaire. Rebecca, welcome to you. First of all, tell us a bit about your degree you're studying and what your involvement is with the RMIT community.
Yeah, so I'm Rebecca and I'm in my first year of journalism. I have studied at AYA as well, and I'm a part of the RMIT Yoga Club, the sports club, and I've actually just started a journalism and media platform called The Newsroom with some of my peers. So that'll be really exciting to see that launch off.
Now, Rebecca, how many years have you been practicing yoga and what actually inspired you to get into it in the first place? And as our viewers will see from your YouTube channel, did you get into yoga because you had so much room for activities, to quote my favorite film, Step Brothers?
Look at all the sports space. So much aerobics in here. So many activities.
Yeah, totally. I had too much room in my house and I just thought I have to fill the space by doing yoga. No, I got into it when I was about 13 or 14. I had a gym membership and I went to a yoga class with my dad. And after the class, I just remember how sort of weightless and zen I felt. And I just said to my dad, I feel like I can fly right now. And then I had the best sleep ever that night. So that's really what encouraged me to keep practicing. And it was so amazing, that first class.
Wow, it sounds near life-changing from that moment onwards. That alone, to get a good night's sleep and feel like you're flying, you're already selling it to us there, Rebecca. Now, there are many different types of yoga in the world, and some of them may be a little tricky to pronounce. Now, could you describe these for us and explain how a student can determine which yoga form is best for them?
There's literally an endless amount of yoga practices one can do, but under the umbrella of Raja Yoga, which is the practice of attaining enlightenment, there is Hatha Yoga. And then under Hatha Yoga, there are hundreds of different yoga practices you can do. And so Hatha Yoga encompasses asana and pranayama, which is the physical postures and the breathing exercises. I'll just run you through some of the main yoga classes that you may find in studios or online. So there's Ashtanga Yoga, which follows the same sequence of set postures. It's very disciplined, and if you need more structure in your life, it's really great, but it's super challenging. And then Vinyasa stems from Ashtanga. It's about the fluid flowing movement linked with breath, but it's also fast paced. So if you need to focus on movement, it's another great class. Bikram is the set sequenced poses in a sauna-like room. Kundalini yoga is equal parts spiritual and physical. So it's the premise of Kundalini yoga is to release the Kundalini that's said to be coiled at the base of the spine. And so that class involves a lot of heavy breathing and chanting, and it's quite intense. So maybe not for the beginner, but it's certainly something to work towards. Iyengar yoga focuses on alignment, and the poses are held for a long time, typically with heaps of props, and they really get into the subtleties of each pose. And it's a good one if you have injuries. So you use props to help you get into the positions. Slow flow is my personal favorite class. It's a slowed down version of Vinyasa. There's a long time held in poses, and there's a strong emphasis on breathing and mindfulness. And then yin is really the most relaxing class, I'd say, in that it's predominantly lying down on the floor, and it's all about stretching and getting into the fascia, the ligaments and the tendons, and just meditating and being still. So they're like a rundown of the main classes, but there's literally so many.
As you mentioned there, Rebecca, it's fantastic that yoga is for everyone, that there are so many different specialities within yoga where if you do have an injury or you just want to be calm and relax or be super disciplined, there is yoga there for you.
Yes, definitely. Super good in that way.
Now, Rebecca, you brilliantly described to us all those different forms of yoga, and there are so many, as you said, almost endless yoga. But if we explore the classical yoga a little more deeply, there are 8 limbs of yoga. Could you tell us about what these represent and why they are so important for people practicing yoga?
The 8 limbs of yoga, you may like to sort of visualize it as a tree of yoga. You've got the trunk and the roots, which are really the subconscious side of all the yoga practices that we do, and also links to the ancient sacred texts that yoga stems from. And then you've got your branches of the tree, which are the 8 limbs, and then you've got the leaves that stem off the branches, which are the specific techniques of each limb. When you take the 8 limbs of yoga and combine them with your regular modern yoga class, you can really have this super enriching and all-encompassing experience. So they're equally important to your physical postures and your breathing exercises. But yeah, it's also important to note there are so many different types of yoga. There's the physical stuff, there's the studying of scriptures, there's the devotional loving service. It's about balancing all of them.
What are some of the physiological and psychological benefits of practicing yoga?
Yeah, so again, there are so many, but I'll just point out a few. So the asana, or the physical practice, really creates space, heat, and movement, which are really essential elements in creating any transformational growth physically, mentally, spiritually. Also, asana really encourages a more refined and subtle awareness of your breath, which is super key. Inverted postures in yoga, so when the head is below the heart, this really encourages the blood to move towards the upper lobes of the lungs for a more efficient and complete exchange of blood gases, resulting in healthier quality of lung tissue. Yoga also really increases the vagal tone in the vagus nerve, and in increasing your vagal tone, we're really creating more sense of connection to our internal bodies, but also our loved ones. And so that's why after a yoga class, you usually see everyone hugging and going, "Oh, how are you going?" And if you can increase that, which is what you do during yoga, you'll have a more loving outlook on life.
That is amazing. Now, Rebecca, when I first did a yoga class, I was introduced to the downwards and upwards facing dog. And because it was my first time, I was trying to picture a pug stretching on a mat.
Yes.
Now, in yoga, there seems to be a lot of different animal positions, including camels, cats, cobras, eagles, lizards, and even a dragon pose, which, considering it's a mythological creature, it may be harder to picture a dragon stretching out on a yoga mat. Probably a lot easier to picture a donkey.
You ain't never seen a donkey fly.
Rebecca, this leads me to ask you, why are there so many yoga poses named after animals?
Yes, and I still do find it really funny. I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to yoga being about finding interconnectedness between ourselves and the outside world. We look to animals in an inspirational way because their nervous systems are in a really good state. They tend to have flourishing moments of stress, anxiety, and conflict. And then like 5 minutes later, they'll be relaxed. And that's because they balance and self-regulate their nervous system so well. They do this through circulating the blood around their body and just collecting themselves. So as long as we're trying to replicate what happens in the natural world, we're doing ourselves a good service.
So it's not only important to look to the natural world for inspiration, but also to the mythological world, which is even better. Now, Rebecca, how can students practice yoga while in lockdown? And what are some good online resources for practicing? Specifically, some really beneficial online yoga videos on YouTube.
Well, I do have a YouTube that you can check out. It's called, it's one word, lowercase, Rebecca Jade Yoga. But apart from my corner of the internet, there's so many other yoga teachers on YouTube. There's literally thousands of free yoga videos. I'd encourage anyone to check them out. And then you've got online studios. So during COVID, a lot of the yoga studios have had to transition online, and they're even offering free yoga classes, some of them. And that might be beneficial to someone who wants to get feedback from a teacher who can watch them.
Rebecca, you mentioned that you're very, very involved with the RMIT community. Now, how can students join your beloved RMIT Yoga Club? And where are some of the yoga classes held? And what are some of the fun social experiences that the yoga club usually offers?
Yeah, usually we held yoga classes every Tuesday evening for an hour in Building 8. But since COVID, obviously, we've all gone online. And now what we've done is combined RMIT Yoga Club students with the Melbourne Uni Yoga Club students. You can find the Zoom link for that on the RMIT Yoga Club's Facebook.
Finally, Rebecca, it's one of our favourite segments on the show. It gives our wonderful guests the opportunity to get their top simple tips to our viewers out there. I'm happy to announce we have Rebecca's top 5 tips to balancing your body, mind, and spirit. What are your amazing tips for us today, Rebecca?
All right. Tip number 1 is spending 1 hour in nature a day, whether that's at the beach or a park or in your backyard, bare feet on the grass. Tip number 2 is taking deep breaths more often, like through the belly. Tip number 3 is laughing more often. Having a deep belly laugh a day is really good for the soul. Tip number 4 is more physical affection, whether that's with your pets or your family members or your housemates. It really increases the vagal tone up, as I was talking about. And tip number 5, movement. So any kind of movement, it could be yoga, running, whatever you like to do, increases blood circulation and is super good for the mind.
There's some great tips right there, Rebecca. And where can our flexible viewers today find you if they have any further questions about the topics we discussed today and possibly some tips on how to pronounce some of those words you said?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube. It's one word or lowercase, Rebecca Jade Yoga. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My name's Rebecca Broadhead. Yeah.
And Rebecca, do you have a final message you'd like to leave with our lovely viewers today?
I hope everyone watching is taking care of themselves and taking care of their loved ones. This period of time won't last forever, so hang in there. And yeah, just remember, yoga is for everybody. Even if you have mental blocks, physical blocks, you can still practice one of the many forms of yoga.
And I've got to ask you, Rebecca, just finally, how many times do you do yoga a day and for how long?
Good question. You may be surprised because I don't have a regimented yoga routine. I know some people do. So I don't do asana every day. I might do asana 3 or 4 times a week. And then other days I just meditate or I just have a bath and be mindful about something. So yeah, I'm not super regimented.
But as long as you're doing it relatively consistently, that's the main thing.
Yeah, consistency is key, not frequency.
Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today. Stay safe, happy and healthy during this period of time and keep stretching like a dragon or like a donkey.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Remember, you can find all of our new episodes of Healthy Habits via the RMIT Sports website, RMIT Sports Instagram page at RMIT Sports. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. We'll see you next week on Healthy Habits.